NBC correspondent Mariana Atencio has been following the story of separated families. She joins us now from New York. Panel is back, by the way, Shana, Alfonso, Ruth. Mariana, let me start with you, though. So I guess the Trump administration got some qualified good news from this judge. They have a big homework assignment over the weekend, don't they?
They need to get to work, Chuck. They need to come up with this master list, as you labeled it. And really, the judge focused on the tender age children, the children under 5, because that's the first deadline coming up on Tuesday. So the government needs to provide this judge with a list of the 101 kids under the age of 5 by tomorrow at 5 p.m. Pacific time. That list will then be reviewed by the plaintiff, in this case, the ACLU, and then the judge will rule by Monday whether or not the government deserves or there's a justification for the extension of this deadline. And he basically said, listen, I need you to comply with the time frame. I need you to move forward with these reunifications. But if you can't reunify a certain group of kids, I need you to put them in a category and tell me why you're not able to do it by Tuesday. So as you mentioned, out of the 101 kids under 5, we know there are 19 parents who've already been deported. There are 19 parents that have already been released into the country. So those are going to be sort of the hardest to pair up. But in the case of the other half, or the 46 kids, the judge said you need to get these reunifications underway.
By the way, I was gone for a couple of days, but it struck me that when the administration came out yesterday with the reunification number and talked about that they're now under 3,000, that was one of those, wait, what? I never knew it was over 3,000. Have they explained why? Were they not? I would say here they haven't been forthcoming. We don't know that they were misleading, but they certainly weren't forthcoming about the number.
Chuck, as somebody who's been following the story for weeks, it was a huge jump. The last number that they had given us was 2,047, and then all of a sudden it jumps to under 3,000. And you know, that's a huge range of children. We don't know why that happened. They also said that that might include kids that were actually separated from their parents before zero tolerance was announced on May 7th.
All right, let me bring the panel in here. Shana, I know this is drawing now some bipartisan complaints. You have Congressman Carlos Cubrelo, Republican from South Florida. He was denied entry into one of these shelters earlier, and he says HHS only said he didn't follow protocol. He seemed to be they're not making any friends here, left or right.
No, they're not making any friends. I think one of the things that's interesting is, HHS Secretary Azar did a conference call yesterday. That's when this 3,000 number came out, where everyone was like, wait a second, that wasn't what we thought the number was. But what's really interesting is the guy in charge of the Office of Refugee Resettlement, which is the one who is in charge of these kids who have been separated from parents or kids who come over by themselves, Scott Lloyd, who has been in the news before, but not that much. No one is really asking, like, how is he doing this? Now, I realize HHS, is overall, but he is the guy who is in charge of figuring out what to do with these kids. Congress is not called to talk to him. Right. He has shown up on a couple of conference calls but won't take questions. And I find it fascinating that that guy hasn't actually had a conversation.
And Alfonso, you worked in the administration. You worked you understand this system pretty well. There was another thing. It sort of goes to this point Shana's making. Apparently, records linking children to their parents have just disappeared. This is according to the Department of Homeland Security. I think part of this, we have a bureaucratic chain. There is too many HHS, DHS.
And working in silos.
Yes.
I'm actually giving HHS a pass because this is a Homeland Security Department created problem. They receive instructions from Stephen Miller.
You HHS having to clean up a DHS mess?
Absolutely. I mean, they're releasing the parents or removing the parents. How do you get them together? It's a huge mess. It's a big mess. And again, I have to blame Stephen Miller. I don't think the president knew exactly what was going on, but Stephen Miller has been going through regulations, Department of Homeland Security regulations to toughen up enforcement, and this was an idea.
Okay, let's not give anybody a pass here. Let's not give anybody a pass. Let's say the Trump administration, with President Trump at the top, approved a policy of zero tolerance and implemented a policy, apparently even before zero tolerance, of separating children from parents without considering how this was going to work, how they were going to be reunited, what the consequences of this is going to be. And it's really easy to point fingers, and I'm very happy to point fingers at Stephen Miller, but I am pointing my biggest finger at the president. And he is ultimately responsible for this. And this is not a matter of bureaucratic silos. This is a matter of presidential inattention.
We've had this problem before, and we have to put it in context when we're talking about it.
We have never had a problem like this before.
Well, we've had it. We just haven't talked about it enough. Because under the Obama administration, we separated families. We separated father from mother and children, and we held mother and children indefinitely. Some people complain, but I don't think a lot of people paid attention to it. We've had the same problem. We have a disastrous immigration system, and we need to fix it. That's why we need legislation. But I have to say, the person that's working on this day to day is Stephen Miller, and I put responsibility on the president. Absolutely, the buck stops with him. But I think this was conceived by Miller.
Well, I also think there is something to be said for the judge is basically saying, give us a list of who you have.
Right.
We don't have a list.
It sounds like he's trying to. Okay, like, look, I'll give you more time, but I got to know you're doing this.
Exactly. And I think we all, especially we talked about this at Vice News, we expected the judge to do this, to give them an extension, but they had to prove that they were actually moving forward.
I thought this is a more stringent reaction than I thought. I thought they would get more leeway in this. Mariana, let me ask you this. So what happens if the government can't produce a list that satisfies this judge?
The judge said he would rule on a case-by-case basis, Chuck. So, you know, if you can't reunify this specific 2-year-old, he needs to know that you're actually moving forward with the other 100 kids, you know what I mean? And regarding the DNA samples and the fingerprints that they're asking of these parents, I've actually spoken to parents who are having to submit this. And I have a mother, Maria, who I've been speaking to. She is trying to get reunified with her 7-year-old and her 2-year-old. That is supposed to happen by Tuesday. She's being told that these DNA samples could take weeks, if not months.
So I guess my question is, so they violate this court order. I mean, what are we going to do? Put HHS in jail? I mean, I'm being facetious here. You get my point. Like, it's not going to make them do it any faster.
I think what organizations on the ground are also worried about, and it was their basic complaint, is that the fact that they're asking for DNA samples and asking for fingerprints now means that the intake process at the outset wasn't done properly, meaning that there was no real plan to reunify these kids with their parents when this process began. And that's why this White House and the administration is scrambling right now to do this under the deadline.
That's the most important point. Apparently, nobody thought they should keep track of the kids they're separating. Anyway, Mariana Atencio, I got to let you go. Thank you very much. Much appreciate your reporting. Hello, YouTubers. If you're watching this, it means you've checked out our channel, so thank you. Now do me a favor. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there. Click on any of the videos to watch the latest interviews and highlights from MTP Daily and MSNBC. You can get more Meet the Press content every morning in the First Read newsletter. If you're tired of content that you don't know anything about where it came from, you don't have to have that problem with us. NBC News, MSNBC, MTP, and the Meet the Press mindset right here for you on YouTube. Subscribe now.